What's more important to me right now?
I need that icon and I need that now.
No, you refill it.
If I don't refill it, you can have the extra bonus. Like, fine. Hello, welcome to the Dice Tower. I'm Wendy Yi.
And I'm Chris Yi.
And today we are going to be doing a review of Inferno.
This is published by Red Mojo Games, designed by Fernando Eduardo Sanchez, a designer that I also know had a few other games come out this last Essen. So this is a game, we've done a live play of this, actually, sponsored live play.
Yes.
So if you want to watch a full gameplay of it, you can see it on the channel. But this one's quite a theme, isn't it?
It is. You know, it's interesting because I'm not really familiar with this piece of literature.
I've read just the Inferno back in high school. Is one of the things I actually read instead of the Cliff Notes.
Oh.
Well, I was happy I read it.
Fancy.
So I was very intrigued by the theme to see how this one worked and everything. So let me show you a little bit how it plays. Not a detailed, complete walkthrough of how the game plays, but a nice overview so you can get an idea of how it plays. Let me show you. Here's Inferno set up on the table. This is an individual's player area you'll see over here and a few setup items on the side, but this is the main central board. The top of the board has 8 worker placement spots that you'll be sending your family members to. There are the underworld area, which has the 9 circles of hell that you're moving these souls through to determine which type of action you get to take up in Florence. And then there's also the bottom area here, which are tracks for endgame scoring stuff. This is Dante here, who is a timer for the game. As Dante moves to different areas, he will trigger different events, and when he reaches the end, that'll be the end of the game. You'll notice there are also 2 monsters chosen at random. There are 4 left and 4 right side monsters who will have different effects when they get triggered. Now, let's talk about the general flow of the game. In Inferno, you're going to, every turn, take 2 different phases here. The first phase is called the Hell phase, where you will move a soul in Hell, and then that will directly correspond to the second phase, or the Florence phase. Depending on which soul, or what symbol you moved a soul onto, this one here shows the bighorn ram or sheep symbol. So that means that I can only take one of these 2 actions over here when it's my worker placement phase. So I could send someone over here and complete this action. Or if I moved someone down here, you'll notice some of these souls are laying down because they have reached the matching color spaces, and whoever moves that sinner there will score the number of points for moving them to the right area. But any sinner that's in your way or laying down can be leapfrogged over, so this player on their turn could move this orange fella all the way down here and take one of the ship actions, or the ship wheel, steering wheel actions. Another option is, since there are specific coins for the underworld, there are florins that are paying for top actions, and there are also these, the underworld coins that you can pay to ferry a soul fresh from the graveyard across to a new action spot. So this top area will give you a lot of flexibility in actions, but you can also leapfrog down from there if you'd like. So if you came over here to this gazebo-looking action, you could send one of your workers to this spot here. There are spots that give you more workers, allow you to find more orphans that you need to just take into your very influential Florence family. Or you can build up your tower taller so you can store more things and family members and goods over there. These inner actions are going to be easier ones, which would just give you more stuff. These outer actions are going to be expensive, have some more specific requirements, but will be stronger actions. There are actions to get goods, which you can use to pay for cards, pay the immediate cost on the left, and you get a bonus at the end of the game if you have the matching good on the right. There are spots that allow you to turn florins into the underworld coins, the denarii, I believe. There are ones where you can spend these underworld coins to pay for these monster effects. These will all move around the board and have different effects depending on the game. Some of them will give you extra scoring opportunities. Some of them will shut down or give you exclusive right to move certain souls, things like that. Other ones will allow you to take guests into your home, which is important because these guests that you have here are going to allow you to make stronger accusations. So those are the kind of the basic actions that you're going to be doing. So that is the general thing. You'll move a soul and then send out a worker. But what happens if you have used up all of your workers that are already on the spots there? You can do the second option. So after you do your movement in the hell phase, you can, instead of sending out a worker, you can accuse a sinner. And this has a few steps that are involved here.
So if I wanted to, for example, if I had a worker up here in this yellow spot, if I wanted to accuse a new sinner, then I would do a few things. One, I would have to move one of the current sinners on the board here to one of the key spaces. So I might pay a coin to bring this person down there. The same thing that applies if I want to send a worker to a spot, I have to match this, or you can pay 2 of the underworld coins to ignore that. But if I want to accuse over here, I have to have moved a worker to a key space, and now I can accuse at a green or a yellow so long as I have at least one worker over there. If I want to accuse one of these outside spaces because they're stronger, I have to have one of those matching colored guests. You can always accuse from the inside here. So if I wanted to accuse over here, this person that I'm using to accuse, this family member, goes over to my tower and is now out of the easy rotation of my worker placement pool. There is an action to return these, however, that I could take later. After you do that accusation, you take all the rest of the workers that are not on that spot and they come back to your available pool. You are going to add a new sinner of that color. So if I added yellow, if I accused yellow, a new yellow sinner comes out into the graveyard. I would then advance on that color track down here at the bottom so that I am more likely to get good endgame scoring. And every one of these also has a bonus action that will trigger when you do that. And then lastly, Dante is going to advance forward one step. So what will happen is eventually Dante will reach this step over here, and the event, when he reaches the space, is that the purple diploma is going to be determined. So you look at who is furthest ahead on the purple track, and you'll notice that I am, so I get to place one of my diplomas out there on the side, and that's going to be important for endgame scoring. Eventually Dante will move this time, down to this space the next time an accusation happens, and that player will get some bonus. Down here, whichever player is furthest ahead on the green track is going to get a diploma for endgame scoring, so on and so forth, until eventually, at the end of the game, the last event that will be triggered is that Dante comes here. Whoever is furthest ahead on the light blue track will get a diploma there. And then at the end of the game, you're going to go through scoring. The player right here does a very good job of breaking down turn summary, the 8 worker placement spots, end game scoring, and the common symbology of the game. But you'll go through the different steps here. So these cards that you have that have end game effects will fire off. Anything that you have earned throughout the game, of course, will be tracked on the points tracker. But then you'll go and score diplomas. Every player who has a diploma in a color is going to multiply their current standing on the track times the value here determined for endgame scoring. However, the number of empty spaces in that circle of hell is going to move this multiplier down. So if you have a diploma in a color, you're incentivized to try to move souls down or move these monsters up to cover these spaces, or have endgame bonuses which say that you can cover up a certain number of these souls here right at the end of the game. So maybe this multiplier track will only move down 1 or 2 steps instead of more. So you'll multiply everyone who has a diploma, even though only one person is awarded a diploma typically at a time, except for ties. But players can also earn these 2 half diplomas by moving to the end of spaces. They can turn those in for a complete diploma later. And so maybe multiple players are going to score off of the same color. There's a loan track down here, so the more loans you've taken throughout the game, you'll lose points at the end of the game. Whoever has the tallest tower and the most family members at home at the end of the game, most Florence, little bonuses like that will earn points, and whoever has the most points at the end of the game is the winner.
Let's go ahead and start talking about the components of this. So we do have the deluxe version here at the Dice Tower. We don't have the basic version, and I don't really know the specific differences between the two.
For example, the monsters, the 2 monsters that you put in the labyrinth each time, or in the circles of hell each time, these are miniatures instead of standees. There's some plastic upgraded bits rather than cardboard punch-outs.
I'm sure the tuck boxes and those kind of things.
Yeah, so personally, I very much actually like what they've done with the production of the I don't always love the trays and stuff that come in games. I think that's a deluxe only thing, right? So I won't belabor that point, but it's a very good production, I think. Even if it were the retail one, there's standees instead of some miniatures and stuff. That's fine with me. I think that the art looks good. I think that it's presented overall very well in here. And clearly thought was put into a lot of elements of the production.
Yeah, and I think that the graphic design that is on the board helps you know what the actions are, what the flow in the sequence is. Like, you have the ability to reference everything that you need, and so you don't have to pull out the rulebook unless you're looking for something very specific.
There's 4 player aids, and they unfold and they show, hey, turn structure, all the action spots. Because, to be fair, the icons for what all the action spots do, I feel like is good once you know it, but upon like first blush of looking at it, you're like, that action space does like 4 different sub-steps.
Yeah, what is that weird monster symbol thing versus the river thing versus the dude with the bow and arrow thing? Like, yeah.
Yeah. So there's those little hiccups there. I think the biggest visual hiccup for me, though, is the kind of the end game tracker as Dante moves down the staircase. In a 4-player game, it works very well. Every single stop of the staircase, there is an icon that Dante stops on, activates an event. In the 3-player game, it tells you to put out these little blocker pieces that cover up some of the events. And what the rulebook says is Dante skips a blank staircase stop, and he just moves to the next one. In the 2-player game, the reverse side of the board is pre-printed with empty spaces, like empty areas that look like Dante should stop there.
Like, they look like level spots.
Right.
Like, it's not just a staircase, yeah.
Yeah, so if you don't know the 3-player variant rules, then the 2-player variant rules aren't clear. I wish that was more specifically clear, because that was something that we kind of debated back and forth, looked it up online in the forums and stuff, and then it was clear. But anyway, that's a small hiccup, I think, in the rules.
Yeah, that's a small hiccup. I think my other thing is just the board is so massive that it's very hard to fit this game on a table. Like, we don't have a tiny table, and it's hard to play. Like, playing this at 3 was hard. And I was like, we couldn't have another player because everything was shoved on that 4th player spot.
I think that when you look at the board in totality, you're just from a certain distance, you're like, whoa, this is so busy. And then as you get a little bit closer, you're like, oh, everything's on here, and it's actually laid out very well.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing. There's a possibility of a little bit of table space issue and just kind of being overwhelmed by the look of it. That being said, I think that it does look great. And it's one of those things, as soon as you learn it, you're like, oh, I see what everything is now very clearly.
Well, and I think that that's what's cool is that it isn't just visually thematic, but I feel like that theme is very much tied in to the mechanics of the game. So bringing those souls across the river, having to play the drachma so that you can get them across the river, and then having them move down to the different levels of hell based on whatever their sin type is. Like, I just think that there's so much theme behind all of these Euro mechanisms that I enjoy.
Do you think that it's a... What do you think of the theme? Because I imagine this is going to be slightly divisive.
What do I think of the theme? I just think it's cool and interesting. Like, it's different. And like I said, I don't know. I've never read this, so I don't actually know the details of it. I've only read like little summaries of, hey, this is about, going down all the levels of hell and eventually reaching salvation or something.
It's Dante's fanfic of the afterlife.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it is, and I find it very funny that there's little touches, like he put one of the living popes at the time in one of the circles of hell. This was a little bit of like a hit piece on some his Inferno, right?
Yeah.
And so I like this theme a lot. I'm a very religious person. The thing is that we both are, right? Mm-hmm. We're both very active at our church. And I could see some people being a little bit hesitant. Like, does this celebrate sinning and all that stuff? And I would say that it's not. You're sending them to eternal torment. But you are playing as the role of influential, people in Florence. And one of the main actions of the game is you're accusing sinners and sending them to hell. Like, if you really get into the theme, if you really look into it that way, you're playing a very bad person.
You are. You're basically saying that your sins are being made up for by other people sinning more and sending them to hell.
Yeah.
It's a weird. I could see some people being bothered by it.
I guess
thematically. Yeah.
I personally really like it because I think, one, it's not celebrating, the awfulness, but two, I think that it ties in well mechanically with what's going on, like you said.
And I think that's the thing, is I feel like the theme makes it so it's easy to teach the game, but also I play the game and I'm like, I'll move the pink dude. You know what I mean? So I can move up on the pink track.
Yeah, I really enjoy, the two phases of the game. Move a person in the circles of hell, and then that directly corresponds to the worker placement half of the game, half of your turn.
Yeah.
I think that it's a very clean system. At the beginning of the game, it's very, very open feeling. You're like, I can move to any symbol I want. Which worker spot do I want? And then at some point in the game, you're having both of these decisions of, I'd like to go to that worker spot. I'd like to move this person to move them into the matching spot and get 4 points. But then it changes what worker spot I go to. So you start balancing what's more important to me right now, this worker placement action or this movement in the circles of hell. And because they're directly correlated to each other, I find that that's a fun, crunchy decision point.
And there's so many of those moments where you're like, I need that icon and I need that now. But I know that's going to let Chris lay down one of the souls in their region next turn, and then he's going to get 5 points. And it's just like, there's surprisingly a lot of interaction in this game that I don't think I was prepared for when I first played it.
Okay.
I feel like it is very player driven. And now that I've played it a few times, I've seen games where we put out a lot of souls and everything gets really filled up. And then I've played games where not very many souls come out and they take forever to get down to the bottom where they're trying to go, to their levels of hell. And it just surprises me how much it's player driven, being able to get the spots that you want, being able to fill in those roles, because that's so important for endgame scoring. It's fascinating. Like, I was not prepared for that, thinking that this was just like hey,
fun Eurogame.
Eurogame.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, I really want to do this thing, but it's going to set you up, so maybe I'll make a different choice. Maybe I'll use a monster activation ability to make something different happen. I like some of the monsters a lot, and there's other ones that I find are not as exciting. So that's kind of where a lot of like the setup variability comes from, is you can use any combination of the two different monsters.
Well, and I feel like the monsters, whether or not they're useful, is also player dependent.
Yes.
Because like so there's this one that has bells, and you can trade in those bells at any time, and you can move basically a dude anywhere on the line that he's starting at, or one of the souls. But
Dude,
then,
Just
but then
dudes.
another game that I played, there were just never any standing up souls on the board. We were constantly laying them down. Like, we'd pull them over the river and we'd be like, and he goes down here and he's done. And so I was like, he's useless this game, but he was like vitally important and amazing in another game.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how like they can have cool moments and they can have not cool moments.
It's very player driven as to whether a lot of souls will come across from the graveyard, cross the river, and you have a lot of active ones to work with or not, right? And I like that. We've played a few times at 2-player. I've played also with other player counts, and it is funny to me that we've had games where there's like just one dude at a time, and we're just like taking turns moving that one dude, and like neither of us are going to lose this game of chicken of bringing other ones into the fold. But then we've played other times where we have a lot of active people at once. And then late in the game, it funnels back down to like 1 or 2 people at a time. And I like that tension. It reminds me of Seven Wonders, or not Seven Wonders Duel, Splendor Duel. Almost that that tension of like, no, you refill the board. And then you take an action, you're like, no, you refill it. I'm like, oh, no, you refill it.
If I don't refill it, you can have the extra bonus. Like, fine. Yeah, there's a little bit of that. And there's also, you only have to have one dude on the board to be able to accuse someone. And so you could have someone that is just accuse wild, and Dante suddenly just like bam, 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 and everyone else is like, I haven't done anything yet.
Even the length of the game is quite variable.
Yeah, so it definitely surprises me how player driven and it is, and I think that can affect the enjoyment of the game. Depending on what you're expecting. And it's not like you can sit around at the table and be like, all right, everybody, we're going to play the long game. I mean, I guess you could, but...
Well, there are actually 2 setups in the game. There's the long game setup and the short game setup. And I feel actually very strongly that I prefer the short game setup. This is
Are you talking about the starting card?
The starting card. This is besides your point of how fast the actual game ends is player driven.
Yeah.
Totally agree. But there's 2 different versions you can set up, fast mode, longer mode, shorter mode. And the shorter mode is just you start with more stuff. Start with an extra layer of your tower build. Start with more, like more stuff and more spaces.
And I think it's written in the rule book as like a beginner mode.
And having played both, I just prefer that one. It's like playing Terraforming Mars with Prelude.
Right.
Like just start with a few extra things. cool, let's get past the first few awkward turns of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Another thing that I really enjoy is that even though there's only 8 actions in the entire game, I feel like there's at least a little bit of diversity in strategy. Obviously, you want to get points from laying down the souls. You want to get points from moving up on the tracks and getting your multipliers. But then the cards are really fascinating. Like, I love the card. That's 2 different spots that you have to go to be able to get the barrels so you can play the cards and then to actually go and play the cards. But they're fascinating because you get some instant bonus, but then you get an endgame bonus if you have the right barrels. And sometimes that can be huge where you're like, okay, I'm moving up on the blue track now and I get to put, 3 purple souls. I get to lay them down on spots.
Only at the end of the game.
Yeah, but only at the end of the game. And so you could have those sitting in front of you or in your hand, just ready to put down so that you're like, I got this. Like, I'm moving up highly on this track because I have a way to make this happen.
And end of game matters because more empty spots in a track, reduces its end game multiplier. So like some of those effects can be hugely important. And I like that. We can play a game with a lot of cards. You can play a game with no cards and still do well. There's a lot of there's branching paths in what is still a very tight game.
And I think that's important because if Dante moves quickly, other people can feel like, well, I haven't moved up on any of those tracks. I don't have my little scrolls on like anything. And so I appreciate the cards that they give you alternate options for moving on tracks.
You got to get scrolls, though. You're not going to have a happy end game if you don't get the diplomas out there.
Yeah, and that's probably one of my dislikes with this is just that the fact that you get 0 points if you don't have a scroll. I mean, you've moved up on that track. What if you moved it to space 4, but you moved it to space 4 towards the end of the game and you just get nothing?
Then you played badly.
But it just hurts. Like, you're moving up and then somebody that you didn't see comes out of left field and just suddenly pulls in his like, they're like, I moved 1 step ahead. And you're like, no, like I get nothing. I invested so much effort in this and nothing. Like that to me is frustrating.
The half diplomas make up for that. If you're near the end of the track anyway, get that one and then fire focus on another one.
Right, but they're so hard to get.
They are, yeah. Overall, what are your thoughts on the game? How would you score it?
I was debating between a couple points, but I think I'm going to come in at a 7.5. This is one I enjoy, and it's one that I would recommend. I think that there's some really cool ways that the theme is tied in, and I think we need that in Euro games more. I think we need to take those really cool themes, especially when they help you understand how the mechanisms work. The interaction on this, I do find myself to be a little frustrated here and there, especially with the track and the souls. Like, I definitely have those moments where I'm like, I'm annoyed. But I think that there's some really cool things going on with the actions. I love the cards. And I like how you can just, like, we're combined engine building and there's so much positive interaction with moving those souls down the tracks and stuff. So I think that that's super cool. I like the way that the monsters change the setup, and I don't want to play with the mean ones, but as long as I play with the nicer ones, and they even themselves fill in some of the circles of hell so that it helps towards endgame scoring. So I think that there's just some really cool stuff going on in Inferno.
For me, this one is an 8.5. I like it tremendously. I think that it revels in its theme in a nice way. It's definitely not just another soulless Euro. But the theme of it, the art of it, the presentation of it is so striking and great for me. And the fact that it does tie in mechanically well. That funnel of the circles of hell, it intentionally getting narrower, and then, that joy of being able to move people further down the chain. When spots get filled, you can leapfrog over them. So more and more spaces kind of open up over the course of the game. But at some point later in the game, so many spaces could get shut down that you're like, I need to accuse in this color, which is this symbol of shield, and where is it? Are they all covered at this point?
But you just have to spend a bunch of money.
You just spend 2 drachma and you can do anything, right? And
money's tight.
Money's tight in this game, and barrels, the resources are tight in this game. Trying to get up the tracks in time with the timer of Dante, awarding those diplomas, getting those half diplomas. Everything's tight in this game. But as I've played it a few more times, I feel like I can play past the tightness instead of every time feeling like, oh no, it's too tight. And that, to me, is a sign of a great game. So I love what's going on. I love the action selection, love the worker placement, love the the accusation to get your workers back. All of that stuff going on makes this an incredibly fun game for me. Looks gorgeous, a lot of fun. So yeah, Inferno.
There you go.
This is from Red Mojo Games, a high score of an 8.5, giving this one a seal of excellence from the Dice Tower.
There you go. Well, thanks for joining us today. I'm Wendy Yi.
And I'm Chris Yi.
Have fun not doing all those sins that are listed in this game.
Hey folks, thanks for watching another one of our videos. If you like our videos, if you like our channel, you would love to game with us at one of our conventions. Check out Dice Tower Cruise, Dice Tower East, and Dice Tower West. Fantastic conventions where we play games with wonderful people, a humongous library, and lots of other events and stuff. Also, don't forget to check out our channel, like and subscribe. I'm Tom Bassel.